We are continuing our coverage of 2022 elections here in Georgia at the Atlanta News First Digital Desk. I'm Tim Darnell, and we are joined in just a few moments by Cyrus Walker. He is the founding and managing principal of Data Defenders, which is a company based in Chicago, but it does have offices here in Atlanta, and we're basically going to be talking for a few minutes about just how safe and secure our votes are here in Georgia. We're bringing on camera Cyrus Walker now. Thanks so much for joining us, and really just talk to us a little bit about some of the issues that we have faced in the past in terms of election security and ballot security.
So some of the issues that we faced, obviously, started in 2000 with the hanging Chad issue, which sparked a whole movement to electronic voting. Has opened up the voting process to a new level of risks, some cyber risks, for instance. As a result of using computer systems now to manage pretty much every aspect of the electronic voting workflow process. Today, we're dealing with a new type of risk, which is from the internet as a result of some of the components of the electronic voting system being connected to the internet, like the voter registration system or the results reporting system that so many people rely on the evening of elections to gather results from different contests around the country. And so we're dealing with a new type of cyber security risk that we must actively address. We heard about this extensively in 2016 with voter registration systems being attacked across the country, as well as the results reporting systems being attacked. And so that has really caused election jurisdiction officials around the country to step up their vigilance as it relates to protecting these components. And so today, election jurisdictions officials around the country have implemented cybersecurity programs to protect these particular components of the electronic voting system. As the systems have evolved, so has connectivity between the components of the system. And so additional to the focus on voter registration systems, there is now a focus on ensuring that components that are connected to these systems are also secure. So there's a lot of activity happening internal to the voting process that is directed at ensuring that the voting process, that the integrity of the voting process is maintained from start to finish, and that any threats against the electronic voting system can be mitigated appropriately.
You mentioned the hanging chads of the 2000 presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore, and that was really the first time that a lot of us had ever really had the cause or the issue to really question the integrity of our vote. And then obviously we all remember what happened 2 years ago when names like Dominion voting system, a name that most Georgians had never even heard of, was suddenly in the news. I mean, how safe and secure should Georgians feel when they're casting their ballot? We've had almost 2 million early votes cast already. Georgia has a backup system of both electronic and printed ballots. How safe and secure realistically, and how much confidence should we have when casting our votes?
So there are three answers to that question. Let's start with your last question. How confident should Georgians feel when they're casting their votes? I believe you should approach this with a high level of confidence based on the fact that election jurisdiction officials are doing everything possible in cooperation with the federal government to ensure that they can identify any threats and mitigate those threats. As far as how secure the system is, or their confidence in the security of the system, I always say that voters should always approach it with a high level of skepticism. And the reason I say that is not to cast any aspersion on the voting system itself, but skepticism does very well for keeping all stakeholders and officials on their toes to ensure that they continuously do what's necessary to ensure that these systems and components are going to be maintained in a secure manner at all times. They should be questioning the process. They should be questioning the activity around what election jurisdiction officials are doing on a daily basis, especially during an election cycle, to ensure that the voting process is going to be maintained in a very secure manner. And so it's you should never rest on your laurels, thinking that this is a one-time thing. This is a continuous process. Cybersecurity is a continuous process, and it must always be active, must always be maintained at its very highest level. Now, I will say that the federal government, along with state and local jurisdictions, have teamed up to provide resources to ensure that the electronic voting systems are secure, especially during the voting cycle. Everything from issuing directives from the federal government down to the state and local levels. From the federal level, providing resources that the election jurisdiction officials can use to help to identify and mitigate threats. Certification testing that's widely used for every voting system that gets put into service in this country from the federal and state level, which is set up to help states identify any issues with the operations of these voting systems to ensure that when they put these systems into use, that they're going to operate the way they are expected to operate, and that they're going to operate in a very secure manner. So this is a partnership. It's not just a partnership between the federal, state, and local jurisdictions, but it's also a partnership between the voters and the election jurisdiction officials. And it has to be an active partnership. And as I said earlier, that skepticism that I suggest that voters approach these systems with is a very good thing to ensure that all election jurisdiction officials and manufacturers are doing everything possible to ensure that the voting systems are as secure as they can be.
You are obviously the founder and managing principal of Data Defenders, and I understand that your company is registered as a minority-owned business. Talk to me and our viewers a little bit about how important it is for minority-owned businesses to be, participants not only in the electoral process and safeguarding the electoral process, but also cybersecurity in general. We've seen numerous hacks and data breaches over the years, from Equifax to Colonial Pipeline, both here in Georgia. Talk to us a little bit about how important it is for minority-owned businesses to really be active participants in these kind of endeavors.
Well, I'll speak to it from a perspective of talent. There is quite a bit of talent that exists with minority-owned businesses. And the participation of minority-owned businesses is critical to ensuring access to that talent, and that we are contributing to the democratic process, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity in the voting space, but also generally. Minority-owned businesses provide jobs. They help to address business-related issues. They're very skilled and capable, just as any other business is, in delivering services and products that can help particularly local municipalities to run better operations, to address issues. And it's just overall good for the economy. We know that 75% of the workforce in this country is employed by small businesses, and a good chunk of that are minority businesses. So we are doing ourselves a great justice by getting minority businesses involved in the economic engines that run our communities, our states in this country, because it's just good for everyone in the long run.
Up our conversation with Cyrus Walker, who's the founder and managing principal for Data Defenders, a company based in Chicago, but which does have offices in Atlanta, which is where you are at, Mr. Walker. Thanks for joining us. Share one thought, one observation about the nation's electoral cycle or voter security just ahead of these historic 2022 midterms. One final thought.
My final thought would be vigilance is key. Vigilance from both the federal, state, and local jurisdictions, but as well as from voters that are going to the polling places, that are casting their votes. It's important that we all stay on our toes, that we are all mindful of activity that's happening, because we can mitigate this risk against our electronic voting system quite effectively, but we all must remain vigilant in doing so.
Thanks for joining us, Cyrus Walker, and thanks to all of you for watching Atlanta News First.